is all about preparedness. We don't have a hurricane going on right now. But guess what? We're supposed to have one heck of a hurricane season. Now's the time to get ready. Because when the people who wear these have to go out, for those unprepared, for those that don't get ready, it makes it harder. For those that get ready and are prepared, it makes everything easier. I have been out on several of these events to whether it was a hurricane. Let me tell you a story. So he's a very good Christian man. He loved God. He was a deacon in his church. He had faith beyond belief. But in New Orleans, the dikes were breaking. And the police were going through the neighborhood. Y'all need to get out of here, pack your stuff, take only what you need, get in your cars and you leave. They got to the man's house. He's sitting on the porch and he says, "Sir, you need to go. You need to go now." He goes, "That's okay. The Lord's going to take care of me." Police went on. A couple hours later, as the levees kept falling and more flooding happened in that whole district there, as the waters raised, they were out there in boats. And a boat comes by and says, "Man, get in quick." The guy goes, "That's okay. The Lord's going to take care of me." A couple hours later, the water rose all the way up to the rooftops, and the guy's sitting on the top of his roof. And a Coast Guard helicopter comes out there. "Hey, you need to get in the helicopter. We're going to drop a basket." "Nope, I'm good. The Lord's going to take care of me." And the man drowned. And he got to heaven. And he looked at the Lord and he says, "Lord, you said you would take care of me." The Lord said, "What else could I do? I sent a cop, a boat, and a helicopter, and you wouldn't get in." The Lord expects us to be smart. He expects us to think. He expects us to do things to help ourselves. So in this time of preparedness, we live in Florida, and we're supposed to have several major hurricanes this season. We had kind of a light season last year. How do I know that? Because I'm not having to spend extra days in school this year. I got all my vacation days this year, because they normally take those away for hurricane days. We didn't have to use any of them this year. But you know what the weathermen are saying? I hope you enjoyed last year, because you're going to pay for it this year. So it's time to fill up those water canisters. It's time to get your gasoline in. It's time to check that generator, make sure it still runs. To get your, I always get propane bottles, so I have my grill where I can cook on my grill if we lose all of our electricity and stuff. It's time to do those things. Make sure you got batteries, all those things that you need to do. You say, "Well, Pastor, how's that biblical?" You're going to hear right now how it's biblical. Because what did God send Joseph to do? To prepare for bad times that were coming. And he did. He spent 7 years growing food and packing it away. And guess what's happened? Now we're in the middle of the drought. That drought will last 7 years. People all over the world will die from hunger. But not in Egypt. Why? Because they prepared. God foresaw what's going to happen, told Joseph what's going to happen, and Egypt listened to Joseph. They listened to God. How surprising. Okay? And listened to Joseph, and they had prepared, and now they're only in the second of 7 years that there's not going to be any plowing, there's not going to be any grain coming up. Whatever they got, that's all they got for 7 years. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the sermon today. Preparedness. Excuse me, I left my glasses at home. But I'll get through this because John's going to put it up on the big screen back there. See? And if I have a hard time reading here, I can turn around and look at that. So we're in Genesis 45, starting out with verse 3 through 28. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" He's looking at the same brothers that threw him in the pit, sold him off to the Amalekites. The Amalekites sold him off to Potiphar. Then he spent time in prison. And then he spoke for the Pharaoh, and Pharaoh put him over all the land of Egypt. Egypt. Now it's about, 20 years later. Joseph's not the little teenager that went into captivity anymore. He's a full-grown man. And now his brothers have come back the second time. And he's already let them know who he is. And he tried them with the cup to see if they would be honest enough. And then he tried their heart to see if they would they stand up for Benjamin, or would they give him up? And now it's a time of reunion. I am Joseph. Does my father still lives? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Yeah, they know what they did. They're scared. Here's this guy, now he's king of Egypt. You know, he's a second in command over all the country. And they know what they did to them. I imagine they are scared. Please come near me. So they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now, do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. God knew what was going to happen. This was all pre-planned. God knew how this was going to go down, and he needed to save his people. And to save his people, he used Joseph. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there is still 5 years in which there will neither be plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a prosperity for you in the earth, and to save your lives a great deliverance. So now it is not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and the Lord of his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. God prepared. He expects us to do the same. I get these all the time. Pastor, I just don't know what I'm going to do. What's going on? Well, I've had this, I don't know. It could be anything. My air conditioner's come out, there's a leak in my roof, my plumbing is broken, and I just don't know what to do. First of all, there was no preparedness there. Okay? Everybody should have a little nest egg. You know what I mean? A little bit of money put back for that tragedy that's going to happen in all of our lives. Okay? God expects us to do that. He expects you to give your tithe. He expects you to take care of your family. But he expects you to be a little bit prepared too for that tragic time. We always keep a little bit back, so in case, just like it's happening right now, Peggy's mama has fallen and broken her hip. She already had a stroke on one side, and she broke the hip on the other side. So now she can't put any weight on her legs. And she's in rehab, and she's not doing good. And Peggy may have to jump up here and go. And you know what? I'm able to say to her, go do it. Here's the money right here. It's already set aside. We put it back for in case of emergency. Go do what you need to do. God expects us to do that. Now, not all of us can do it to a great extent, but we can do a little bit. Having a little bit of a nest egg pack. That's what Joseph did. He wouldn't put this stuff back, and now who's it going to benefit? Not just Egypt. It's going to benefit the future of Israel, the whole nation. And to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it's not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of his house, and a ruler throughout the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me and do not tarry. Go to the next picture for me. Okay? So where is he being sent? This is Goshen. I want you to notice something about Goshen. Where do all the rivers go? They go in the land of Goshen. God has pre-planned a place, not just food for his people, but a good place for them to be where there'll be plenty of water. So he's prepared the land of Goshen for them. And you shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children and your children's children and your flocks and your herds and all that you have, and there I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, for there is still 5 years of famine. Preparedness is obvious in what Joseph did and what God did, what he put on his heart to do. Think about all the bad things that happened to Joseph. Do you think Joseph thought, oh, I'm going to be Lord of all this land? No. All Joseph could see is he's been thrown in a pit. Now he's being sold off. Now he's in Potiphar's house accused of trying to sleep with Potiphar's wife. And then now he's thrown in prison. His life was not very fun. But guess what God was doing the whole time? He was preparing Joseph to run a nation. Because what did he do in those places? When he's in Potiphar's house, Potiphar was a very important man and had lots of property and lots of servants and farms and everything else. And Joseph learned to run that industry. And then he put him in the prison. And Joseph became the one that took care of the whole prison. It said that the guy that ran the prison didn't even know what he had, and he didn't know what the prisoners did because Joseph handled it all. God prepared him for what he was going to do. He prepared him to be the leader of a nation. He didn't just throw him in there. No, he prepared him. And that's what he expects from us, preparedness. And behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. So you shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt and of all that you have seen, and you shall hurry and bring my father down here. Go get Dad. I don't want him starving in the country he's in. I want to know he's okay. You know, you can do a lot if you know your mom and dad. Well, now for me, it's not my mom and dad. They've already passed away. But if you know your kids are safe and your grandkids are safe, it's easier for you to do what you need to do. Joseph needs to run a whole nation. He doesn't need to be worried about his mom and daddy. He wants them here. He wants them close. He wants to know he's got food for them and he's got them taken care of. This is a very practical thing. And he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck, and he wept. And Benjamin wept on his neck. If you think about, these two were separated when Joseph was probably about 12 years old, and Benjamin was probably about 5 or 6. They barely even remember each other very well, but they were close brothers. The only two of that one mom, and they haven't seen each other all this time. I imagine they did weep on each other's neck. Moreover, he kissed all of his brothers. He kissed the brothers that threw him in the pit and sold him. That's forgiveness. And after all of his brothers talked with him, now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. So it pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your animals and depart and go into the land of Canaan. Go to the next picture for me. So this is where Jacob ends up in Egypt. Bring your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat of the fat of the land. Now why would Pharaoh feel this? Joseph saved his nation. Now Joseph didn't do it, God did it. But Joseph was God's representative. He knows what Joseph has done for his nation. He is grateful, and therefore he is telling to Joseph, whatever you need to do to take care of your family, you take care of that. I'll give you anything that you need to do it. Also, do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. I'll give you whatever you need. If you lose your cattle and everything else making the trip, I'll replace it all. Don't worry about it. Then the sons of Israel did so, And Joseph gave them carts according to the command of Pharaoh, and they gave him provisions for the journey. And he gave them, all of them, each man a change of garments. But to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garment. Do you think he's showing a little partiality here? Yeah. Not as much. He gave his brothers some stuff. Okay? He gave his brothers some stuff, the ones that did the dirty. But to his little brother, yeah. He's letting him know what you're going to get when you come back here is going to be really great. And he sent to his father these things: 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food for his father for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed. And he said to them, "See that you do not become troubled along the way." Now, here was where I was surprised. I am surprised that Pharaoh did not send a contingency of soldiers to protect them on the way. And we don't know that he didn't do that because it doesn't say in the scriptures. But Joseph is leader of all of Israel. Do you think he wants to take a chance with anything happening to his father? In my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe he kind of sent the soldiers, to kind of follow them to make sure nothing happened to them all. But he's saying, don't let anything happen to mom and dad on your trip back this way. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed, and they said, "See that you do not become troubled along the way." And they went up out of Egypt, and they came to the land of Jacob. Came to the land of Canaan, to Jacob their father. I want you to see the expression of the picture that I found. Huh? And they did, and they told him, saying, "Joseph is alive." Can you imagine how Jacob felt when he found out that Joseph was alive? Well, it says right here, Joseph is alive, and he is the governor of all of Egypt. And Jacob's heart stood still because he did not believe them. Probably had a panic attack, okay, right about then. Thinking that his son's been dead all of these years. They had the coat that was rent and dripping with blood, and thinking his son had been torn apart. And now he finds out not only is he not dead, but he's the ruler of Egypt. It's probably a little bit more than an old man can take. But when they told him all of the words which Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob, their father, revived. He came around. It was probably hard for him to understand, hard for him to take, thinking all this time in sorrow, worrying about Benjamin the whole time he was gone. And not only did they bring Benjamin back, which made him happy, but he finds out Joseph's alive. Then Israel said, "It is enough. Joseph, my son, is alive, and I will go and see him before I die." Genesis 46, 1-7. So Israel took his journey with all that he had, and he came to Beersheba. Notice he did not leave the country without going back to Beersheba. Now, why is that significant? Jacob's ladder, that's the place where he took a stone and used it as a pillow. I couldn't sleep with a stone as my pillow, okay? But he saw the angels ascending and descending, and it scared him, and he said, this right here is the house of God, okay? And he set up a pillar, and he worshiped there. Now he's fixing to leave the land. So what does he do first? He goes to worship God before he leaves. Whenever we're about to take a large undertaking, guess what we should do first? Go to God.
Amen.
Pray about it.
Yep.
Ask for his help. Ask for his deliverance. So Israel took his journey, and all he had, he came to Beersheba, and he offered sacrifices to God his father Isaac. Then God spoke to Israel in visions in the night and said, whenever you hear these words, Jacob, Jacob, when God calls your name twice, that means something big and important is fixing to be told you. We've heard that before over and over in Scripture. When God calls somebody, when he called Moses, he said, Moses, Moses, making sure he has their attention. And he said, here I am. That's important. When God calls on your heart, first thing you need to say is, here I am. I'm here. What do you want? I hear you. You got to listen to the heart. So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt. He didn't say just go. He says you go, but I'm going to go down with you. I'm going to be there with you. I will surely bring you up again. And Joseph put his hands on his eyes. So Jacob arose from Beersheba and the sons of Israel and carried their father Jacob and the little ones and their wives and the carts which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. So he took his livestock and his goods which he had acquired in the land of Canaan, and he went to Egypt, and Jacob and all his descendants with him, and his sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his descendants were brought down to Egypt. And there, go back to the picture. And he was reunited with the son he thought he had lost, bringing a family back together. Two big messages in this. One, God loves us and he won't let us do bad things alone. He had him go down to Egypt. He says, I'm going to be right there with you while you're there. I love you. I take care of you. Two, be prepared. Joseph prepared for Jacob and his family to come to Egypt. He didn't even know he was preparing. God will have us do things, and we're sometimes not even really sure why we're doing what we're doing, but we're doing it. And then in the end, we find out, if you'd have told me 35 years ago, I'd be standing here doing this, I'd look at you like you grew a third eye. Okay? God had to prepare me to be able to do what I do. He didn't just throw me in there. I was a Sunday school director. I was a youth director. I was a training union director on mission trips and on and on. God had to prepare me to be the one thing I'd always said, and I've said these exact words. I looked at Tim Cox and I says, Tim, I'll do anything in the church you need me to do as long as I ain't got to do what you're going to do. Don't tell God what you won't do. When you tell God what you won't do, that's the very thing he's going to have you do. So you got to be careful about that. But God loved his people. And God prepared for his people. And he wants us to be prepared too. Father, thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for this wonderful story. For us who live in Florida, it's an important story, and that's being prepared. Yeah, going out and buying flashlight batteries is an important thing for us to do. But more importantly, it's a family story. No matter how bad things happen in a family, you are still in charge, and you can still give forgiveness, and you can still bring families back together. And you can still have joy in a family. So, Father, we thank you for this wonderful lesson. Let it sink down in our hearts and let it be part of what we do, not just something we heard on a Sunday morning. So we give you great glory for all that you've done in the past and what you're doing right now. Be with us as we continue the service, as we go into our family time. If there's something on your heart that's hurting you and you just need to spend time with God, you can come up here to the altar. You can come up to your pastor. You can just sit in your seat and pray. Whatever the need is for you, your Father in heaven, as He always does, He's listening. He is listening. He's got His hands to His ear. He wants to hear from His children. He wants to hear your sorrows and your pains and your hardships and everything that's happening with you. Even the good things He wants to hear about. So spend this time and speak to your Father. And He hears you. And all you do in Jesus Christ's name.